Alright, guys, sorry for the delay. We had a bit of a weather thing happening earlier today, earlier, or I would have started earlier. There was a tornado warning. But, anyway, uh, so welcome to episode 2 of NFL 101. Yeah, you guys are getting spoiled. You guys have been getting spoiled this last couple weeks with all the stuff been doing. Nathan released short earlier. I've been releasing a few videos here and there, and let's get me back on. All right, here we go. So today is a simple guide to the NFL draft. Now, give me one moment while I pull up my notes. Yeah, give me a minute. It's gonna take a little bit. I know I'm so disorganized. Here we go. All right. So, the NFL draft, the main body of it. Okay, so the main body of the NFL draft is composed of 7 rounds of starting at 32 picks 32 picks a round. Now, I'll get into a little more detail later of how picks are added, some picks are subtracted. Anyway, first of all, the draft is basically the headline event of the NFL offseason. This is something that happens. It's happening in late April. It's actually the focal point of the off season because a lot of media, NFL media, will focus on teams before the draft, teams after draft, how their fortunes may change, how they look with the NFL prospects they picked up in the draft, and there are certain NFL prospects that people will have expected to make to be picked in the NFL draft that weren't. Now, as I said, the NFL draft is composed of 7 rounds that start at 32 picks, which means there's one pick for each NFL team. Now, how the draft order is determined is by the regular season record of an NFL team. So the worse an NFL team does, the higher their pick is. So the worst team in an NFL, let's just take last season for example. The worst team in the NFL was the Carolina Panthers. However, the Panthers traded away their first round pick in this last draft to the Chicago Bears for the first overall pick in the draft 2 years ago now, or the 2 drafts ago. Well, the draft previous to this draft just happened. Anyway, so let's move on. So the draft happens over 3 nights. One night it starts on a Thursday night, and this first night is dedicated entirely to the first round of the draft, which has 32 picks in it, dead set. Nobody else, no more picks. Rounds 2 and 3, which happen on the second night, are similar. 32 picks. I think round 3 has 33 picks. Can have 33 picks. But round 3 is the transitional period in the draft. But rounds 1 and 2 usually have 32 picks, no more. And I'll get into that a little bit more with draft compensation and draft trades later on. So, let me start at the first round. The first round of the NFL draft is the most important one. That's why it's usually by itself. It is the first round of the draft has the opportunity for you to draft the best players and have them on really cheap contracts for up to 5 years. Now I'll explain a rookie contract, especially a first round rookie contract, in another episode because it's actually a lot more than what I can explain here. So let me explain a compensatory pick. This is where the NFL front office, like the NFL, higher ups, will add draft picks for certain teams. Let's say your team does something during the NFL season, and the NFL awards them a compensatory pick. It could be for a number of a various number of reasons. It's not always one reason. The Chiefs were allowed a compensatory pick this last season for some lost cap room or something. It could be due to lost cap room. It could be due to the NFL just thinks that you are unfairly compensated for a trade that you agreed to. Now, the most important picks in the NFL, like I said, happen in their first round, and the most important pick is the number one pick overall. So the number one pick overall goes to the worst team in the NFL unless they traded it away, like the Panthers did last year to the Bears, which means the Bears, via the Panthers, got the first overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft. This is what we call a draft trade. So what happens in a draft trade is two NFL teams, like a normal trade, will agree to swap picks in 1 year's draft, and most of the time. Oh, excuse me. My food is coming back to haunt me. Anyway, so two NFL teams in a draft trade will agree to swap their picks. So this last year in the 2024 draft, the Chiefs moved up in the draft to draft a wide receiver. Now, how they did this was they agreed to a draft trade with the Buffalo Bills. So the Chiefs got the Bills pick number 28. The Bills got the Chiefs pick number 32, along with a number of other picks in later rounds. And they swapped picks in later rounds. Now, NFL trades can include draft picks. Let's say I'm going to pick a popular player. Let's say Travis Kelce is being traded. It's not going to happen, but this is just if Travis Kelce was being traded. So in order for Travis Kelce to be traded from the Chiefs to another team, another team might offer a player, a certain amount of money, a certain amount of his salary, or a certain amount of his contract that the team he's being traded to will pay, and the last thing that this team, hypothetical team trading for Travis Kelce, would do is to offer a pick. Let's say the Panthers really want to upgrade a tight end, and they called the Chiefs and want to trade for Travis Kelce. They might offer a first round pick for Travis Kelce. They might offer several other picks for Travis Kelce. However, I doubt that the Chiefs will trade Kelce. But that's just a hypothetical to prove that draft picks can be used in a trade for a player as currently playing in the NFL, or the right to draft a player before another team can snag him. So, let me see if I have anything else to talk about in the draft. Yeah. The draft contains so much, guys, because essentially, what happens right after the Super Bowl, and this is I'm gonna go back to watch episode 1 of NFL 101 for a general NFL league year timeline. But I'm gonna explain a few things. So after the Super Bowl ends, so final whistle is called after the Super Bowl ends, is immediately kind of when NFL free agency starts. Free agency is signing certain players that do not have a current NFL team. I'll explain that in another episode. And then after that period ends, of that period of free agency ends, is what many NFL media, stars call draft season. So what happens then is stuff like the combine. Various colleges have something called a pro day, which is basically just a talent show of their players. Various teams could have certain players to their facilities or host to see their facilities, have them in meetings with certain teammates and certain officials from that team, like the head coach and the GM, and maybe even if the quarterback is like someone like Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady, they will be in the room during one of those meetings. Now, that does not mean that evaluating players is singled out in draft season. Between the end of free agency or the end of the Super Bowl and the beginning of the draft towards the end of April. No. And all NFL teams have something called a scout, an NFL scout. The job of this NFL scout is to go to various colleges in a certain region of the country, or maybe even a certain region of the world, and evaluate this player's talent, see if they're viable for the team to draft, see if they're a good scheme fit, a good fit for team dynamics, and a bunch of other things. So NFL scouts are doing their job pretty much year round. They don't take a break. They pretty much draft. They get a few days, off after the draft, and then they'll just back right back at the grindstone for next year's draft. And some scouts are really talented, and eventually that scout might be able to move up to the position of assistant general manager, and then to general manager. Those positions, I will explain in another video. Now, the combine, the NFL combine, is a NFL held event that is basically the NFL's version of a college pro day. So what happens during the combine is various skill position tests, like a 40-yard dash, a lift, how much they can lift, and on a bench press, how much they can bench, how much they can deadlift. Basically saying, are you ready for the NFL? Various measurements of them, like height and weight, seeing if they're a good fit for the NFL or if they're small. Quarterbacks have their hand size measured, so if the quarterback has too small hands, you're likely to know about it. Excuse me. My dinner is creeping up on me again. Anyway, as well as seeing how high players can jump, receivers can jump, seeing how well receivers catch the ball, seeing how well receivers, run routes. So it's basically a skills test. Think of it like a field day in elementary school if you had that. And the combine can either drastically improve your draft value or drastically, just it could just ruin your draft grade, which is what the scouts do. They grade these players and then they watch the combine and say, "Oh, this player isn't as talented as we thought he'll be. He was supposed to be. We're gonna take him from a first round pick to a third round pick. Oh my gosh, this player is actually pretty good. We're gonna take him from a sixth round pick up to like a third or fourth round pick." And I will say, many players in the NFL right now, their draft grades were a lot lower than a lot of people think. Why? Because they had a bad combine or had a bad NFL pro day. But that really doesn't matter as long as your skills translate from college football or from whatever football league you're playing in to NFL football. You're usually gonna get a job. Now, I'm sorry, I'm still looking at my notes, guys. Bear with me these first few episodes, and of course, bear with us as with the general nerd herd, as we're still getting used to recording videos by ourselves. Anyway, the drafting process starts with the scouts, goes through pro days and combines up to the draft. Now, when a team during the draft, if you are fortunate to have a friend who watches the NFL draft regularly, or watches the draft whenever it's on, which this last year me and Nathan did have it on in the background for most of the time it was on when we weren't working or weren't busy with other things. So, the 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 middle rounds, like rounds 3, 4, and 5, well, basically rounds 4 through 7 aren't really important. Rounds 4 through 7 until the last pick of round 7, because round 7 is the last round, and I think it's pick 257 this year, was the last pick of the draft. The last pick is often called Mr. Irrelevant, because it's often called, that's why it's called I can't talk. So the last pick in the draft is often called Mr. Irrelevant because they are the last pick in the draft, and nobody thinks they'll do particularly well. They might do great, but you never know. But it's the last pick in the draft, and by then most people have stopped watching, or if they are watching, they aren't paying very much attention because your last pick in the draft. Now, there have been some great picks before, or some Mr. Irrelevance that have been great picks. The most recent one is Brock Purdy for the 49ers. He did help them get to a Super Bowl, but they didn't win. So it's hard to judge him when he has just a plethora of amazing teammates around him. However, on the other hand, the first pick in the NFL draft is expected to do extremely well, like be almost NFL ready from the jump. And that's true of all first round picks, but the first overall pick is just wow. It's mostly reserved at this point for a quarterback, or if it's not a quarterback, it's this. Guys have to understand, if the first overall pick is not a quarterback, usually that means, one, there are no standout quarterbacks in that draft class, and two, that player that they picked with the first overall pick that isn't a quarterback is a standout at their position. Myles Garrett is one of this. He's a defensive lineman for the Browns now, and he was the year he was picked first overall. He was a standout of all defensive linemen, and everybody thought this defensive lineman is one of the best, bar none. Anyway, now you know what? That's really all I had on the NFL draft. So thank you all for watching this episode of the Nerd Herd Football NFL 101. Keep an eye out for our next episode, and I will see you then. Watch this transition. Alright, guys. If you like the video, like, subscribe. If you'd like to see more,